The last days on Earth were quiet in a way that made the silence feel loud. Cities that had once been full of life now lay in ruins, their streets cracked and empty. Skyscrapers, once shining towers of glass and steel, stood half-collapsed, their skeletal frames reaching toward gray skies. Smoke still drifted from what remained of factories and power plants, mixing with the dust of destruction. Yet in the middle of this devastation, small pockets of humanity survived, clinging to life with stubborn determination. In one hidden underground bunker, buried beneath the mountains, a group of survivors moved with purpose. They were scientists, engineers, soldiers, and diplomats who had managed to escape the initial attacks. Most of the world had been caught off guard when the alien ships arrived. Massive vessels that blotted out the sun and destroyed military bases with precision. Humanity had fought back with everything it had, but the invaders' technology was far beyond anything Earth had ever seen. Entire coastlines had been erased and major cities were gone within hours. Even with so much lost, the people in the bunker refused to give up. They were tired, exhausted, and hungry, but they still had a plan. They were not thinking of surrender. They were thinking of sending a message, one last broadcast that would travel across the stars, a message to anyone listening, especially the invaders. It was a message that would show humanity had not broken, no matter what the aliens believed. The bunker itself was a strange mix of chaos and order. Wires hung from the ceiling, patched together with tape and hope. Computers flickered, some ancient, some newer, all humming as if they knew the weight of their purpose. The scientists worked over screens filled with lines of code, adjusting frequencies, testing signals, and preparing the final transmission. Soldiers patrolled the corridors, rifles ready, though no one expected an intruder. Outside, the world was dead, but inside, life and determination burned brighter than ever. One of the engineers sat at a console, staring at a blinking cursor. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from exhaustion. He had been awake for days, working on encoding the message so it could not be interrupted or blocked. Every word mattered. Every pause, every tone was designed to make sure that whoever received it would understand exactly what humanity wanted to say. The others worked silently around him. No one spoke unless it was necessary. The weight of the moment was too heavy for idle chatter. They remembered the first contact with the aliens. At first it had been exciting, almost hopeful. Humanity had dreamed of making friends beyond the stars, of learning and sharing knowledge. But those dreams had vanished quickly. Misunderstandings turned into arguments, and arguments turned into threats. And then, before anyone on Earth could react, the war began. The aliens struck fast and without mercy. Entire fleets were destroyed in minutes. Satellites that had circled the planet for decades were obliterated. Communications went dark. At first, humanity had thought this was a test, a warning. But it was much worse. It was war, and it was a war humanity had not wanted but could not escape. Now in the bunker, the survivors thought about what had brought them here. They remembered the people they had lost, friends, family, neighbors. They thought about the cities they had grown up in, the schools, the markets, the parks where children once laughed. Those memories were painful, but they were also fuel. Fuel to survive. Fuel to make sure the last broadcast carried the truth. Humanity would not bow. Outside, the world had gone silent. Nature itself seemed to hold its breath. The wind swept across abandoned streets carrying dust and ash. Animals had vanished from most areas, either dead or hiding. Rivers flowed sluggishly, clogged with debris. The sky, once blue and alive, was now a dull gray, a constant reminder of what had been lost. And yet life persisted. In the bunker, and in a few scattered pockets across the globe, people refused to let go. One of the soldiers, sitting in a corner with a worn rifle across his knees, looked up from his thoughts. He had seen too much death to hope for a happy ending, yet he believed in this mission. This broadcast was humanity's last chance to show the universe that it was still here, still fighting, still alive. He did not know if anyone would receive it, if anyone would understand it, but he knew it had to be done. It was not just a message. It was proof that humans could not be broken even when everything seemed lost. The message itself was a mixture of history, warning, and defiance. It included coordinates, information about Earth's last remaining defenses, and, most importantly, a warning. Humanity would fight back. Not with hope alone, But with every resource, every weapon, every plan that had been hidden from the enemy, they had prepared in secret, knowing that the world's last chance might be its only chance. As the team worked, a quiet tension filled the bunker. Every sound was magnified. The hum of a generator, the click of a keyboard, the distant echo of structural groans. No one knew how long the bunker could hold out if the aliens discovered it, but they did not allow themselves to dwell on fear. Fear was dangerous. It was the one thing the invaders counted on. Instead, they focused on precision, on perfection, on making sure the last broadcast would reach its destination. Hours turned into days. Meals were simple, water rationed carefully, and sleep came in brief, stolen moments. The team worked tirelessly, driven by the knowledge that their lives and the lives of all humanity had led to this moment. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying ash and debris, a reminder that the world above was not forgiving. Inside, humanity's last hope flickered like a candle in the dark. Finally, the message was ready. Every word had been chosen, every pause calculated. It was not a plea, not a cry for mercy. It was a statement, a declaration that humans were still here, and they had not been defeated. The engineer responsible for encoding it leaned back in his chair, exhausted, and allowed himself a brief moment of relief. The soldiers around him nodded, their faces grim but resolute. This was it. The broadcast would go out. As they prepared to send it, they all understood something important. This was more than just a message to the aliens. It was a message to themselves. A reminder that even in the darkest hours, humanity could rise. They had survived when others had fallen. They had fought when others had fled. And now, even as the world seemed lost, they would send their voice into the void, loud enough for the universe to hear. The commander of the bunker, standing at the front of the room, gave the final nod. Fingers pressed keys, buttons were activated, and the signal began to travel, leaving Earth for the first time in years. It moved through space faster than any human-made vessel, carrying with it hope, defiance, and a warning. This was humanity speaking, not as victims, but as survivors, as warriors, as a species that refused to be forgotten. Outside, the wind continued to howl, carrying the ash and dust across empty streets. Inside, the bunker was quiet, save for the hum of machinery and the occasional whisper of a scientist checking the transmission. They watched as the signal faded into the distance, knowing they might never see the results. But that did not matter. Humanity had spoken, and that voice would not be silenced. In the silence that followed, there was a strange peace. It was the calm before a storm that no one could yet see, the moment when hope and fear collided. The last broadcast from Earth was out in the universe, and with it went a promise. Humanity would not surrender. Humanity would not die quietly, and humanity would not be forgotten. And somewhere, far beyond the reaches of Earth, that message traveled, carrying the weight of a species that had survived wars, disasters, and extinction itself. It carried a warning that would not be ignored, a voice that would not be silenced, and a spirit that would not be broken. Humanity had spoken, and the universe had heard. The war had started before most of humanity even realized it. At first it was subtle, almost like a shadow passing over the world. Satellites went silent. Strange signals appeared on communication networks, and rumors of strange lights in the sky spread from one city to another. People dismissed it at first, calling it technical errors or natural phenomena. But the truth was far more frightening. When the first ships arrived, massive and unlike anything humans had seen, panic swept across the globe. They were silent at first, hovering above major cities, observing, as if deciding who would live and who would die. Governments tried to respond, but their weapons had no effect. Missiles burned up in the atmosphere, and fighter jets were easily disabled before they could reach the invaders. Military leaders were forced to watch helplessly as the alien ships moved with calculated precision. The attacks began slowly, almost methodically. Communication hubs were destroyed first, then major ports and airports, cutting off cities from the rest of the world. People fled, but there was nowhere to go. The aliens moved too quickly, too efficiently, striking with a precision that left humanity reeling. Entire cities were flattened in hours. Smoke rose from coastlines where once there had been life. People began to panic, and governments struggled to maintain order. Amid this chaos, humans fought back in every way they could. Small groups formed resistance cells using whatever weapons they had left. Old tanks, aircraft, and even improvised explosives became tools of defiance. Citizens took up arms alongside soldiers, determined not to give up without a fight. It was desperation and bravery mixed into a single burning force. Though they knew the odds were against them, humanity refused to surrender. The world's greatest cities, once symbols of human achievement, became battlefields. Streets were littered with abandoned vehicles, broken infrastructure, and the debris of destroyed buildings. People moved cautiously through the ruins, wary of alien patrols and sudden attacks. The sky was filled with smoke and fire, yet life persisted in small, determined pockets. Mothers carried children through the ruins. Scientists hid in basements, continuing their work despite the danger. Soldiers stood guard over crumbling barricades, knowing that every hour they held out mattered. One of the most shocking things for humanity was the alien strategy. They did not merely want to conquer. They wanted to make a point. Cities were destroyed as warnings. Communications were cut to isolate survivors. And any attempts to fight back were met with overwhelming force. Humanity's traditional ways of warfare were useless against such a foe. Yet, in the midst of despair, humans adapted. They used guerrilla tactics, booby traps, and unexpected attacks to slow the alien advance. Small victories were celebrated like miracles. The scientists in hidden labs worked feverishly, trying to understand alien technology. They captured fragments of ships, intercepted signals, and studied patterns in the enemy's movements. Every discovery was a chance to survive, a step toward giving humanity a fighting chance. Engineers modified weapons, created improvised defense systems, and sometimes even managed to reverse engineer parts of alien devices. It was not enough to win, but it was enough to make humanity unpredictable, something the aliens had not expected. People who had once been ordinary became heroes out of necessity. Teachers, farmers, and office workers suddenly led groups of survivors, making decisions that meant life or death. Soldiers were no longer the only ones fighting. Civilians became fighters too. They scavenged weapons, organized safe routes, and shared food and water with those in need. In the chaos, human ingenuity shone brighter than any weapon. Every small act of courage kept hope alive. The alien ships were relentless, moving from one target to another. Earth's major powers tried to coordinate, but communications were nearly gone. Alliances broke under pressure, and some nations fell without a fight. But even when governments failed, humanity at the local level continued to resist. In small towns, villages, and isolated regions, people hid, fought back, and protected what remained of their homes. Each act of survival, no matter how small, became part of a larger story of resistance. As the war dragged on, humanity began to understand that this was not just a fight for territory or resources. The aliens seemed to be testing humans, observing their reactions and calculating responses. Each strike was a lesson, each attack a probe to see how humans would respond. And humans responded with courage, determination, and sometimes surprising ingenuity. Even when the odds were stacked against them, they refused to give up. Among the survivors, there was a growing understanding of what had to be done. They could not defeat the alien fleet with brute force alone. Humanity had to be clever, patient, and united in ways it had never been before. Hidden bases were built deep underground, far from the enemy's sensors. Scientists worked day and night, developing strategies that combined old technology with new insights. Soldiers trained civilians, teaching them how to survive, fight, and communicate without detection. Every step was a preparation for something greater, a plan that would ensure humanity's voice would be heard, even if the surface of the planet was lost. The people in the bunker often thought about the world outside. Memories of cities, forests, and oceans kept them going. They remembered the laughter of children, the bustle of markets, and the quiet moments of everyday life. These memories were painful because so much had been destroyed, but they were also powerful reminders of what was worth fighting for. The aliens may have controlled the sky, but humans still held their hearts, their minds, and their spirit. Even in the darkest moments, small victories kept hope alive. A group of survivors might escape a city before it was destroyed. A hidden laboratory might successfully create a device that could disrupt an alien sensor. Messages between survivors reached places thought lost. These moments were rare, but they reminded everyone that humanity was still capable of action, courage, and survival. The alien forces, powerful as they were, began to notice something they had not anticipated. Humans would not surrender. Even in the face of overwhelming destruction, people adapted, hid, and fought back in unpredictable ways. Entire attacks were thwarted by simple traps, decoys, or acts of bravery. The aliens had expected fear, obedience, and submission, but they found defiance, resourcefulness, and resilience. Humanity, though battered and broken, was not defeated. Inside the bunker, the team worked tirelessly to ensure that humanity's last message could carry this truth into space. They were aware that this message could be the first step in turning the tide, or at least a way to declare to the universe that humans were not to be underestimated. The transmission was not just about survival. It was about identity, pride, and the promise that even if Earth fell, humanity's voice would live on. As the days passed, the survivors continued their work, balancing fear with determination, exhaustion with hope. Outside, the world remained in chaos, but inside, they created a small pocket of order, a place where strategy, courage, and knowledge combined into a single mission. They prepared not just for survival, but for making sure that humanity's story would continue, even in the face of unimaginable odds. The war had already shown the world how fragile life could be. It had shown that even the most powerful species could be brought to the edge of extinction. But it had also revealed something else, that human beings, ordinary as they might seem, were capable of extraordinary acts. They could adapt, fight, and survive when all hope appeared lost. Each day, each small victory reinforced the truth that humanity could not be counted out, no matter the size or strength of the enemy. In quiet moments, the people in the bunker reflected on what had led them here. They thought of the mistakes, the misunderstandings, and the moments of fear, but they also thought of courage, compassion, and the will to keep going. Every step taken in secret, every calculation made in dimly lit rooms was part of a larger plan that they believed could change the course of history. The war was not over, and the path ahead was uncertain. The alien forces were powerful, relentless, and patient, but humanity had something the aliens had not expected: hope, ingenuity, and the refusal to give up. Even when the world above was burning, even when communication was impossible, humans continued to fight in ways that mattered. Every act of defiance, every clever trick, every small survival story became part of a growing force that no alien could fully anticipate. As the survivors prepared for the next stage of their plan, they understood one thing clearly: this war was more than a battle. It was a test of humanity itself. The aliens may have destroyed much, but they could not destroy the human spirit. They could not erase courage, intelligence, or determination. And as long as even a few humans survived, hope remained. The war had changed everything, but it had not broken humanity. In the end, the lesson was simple. Humanity had been forced to face the impossible, to survive when the odds were overwhelmingly against it. And through it all, people had shown that even when everything seems lost, humans are capable of courage, adaptation, and defiance. The alien attacks had destroyed cities, but they had not destroyed the human will. And in that will, in that spirit, lay the seeds of what would come next, a chance to make sure that humanity's voice was heard across the stars. Even as the war raged above the surface, deep underground and in hidden corners of the world, humanity was quietly building something no one outside these secret places could have imagined. While the alien fleets destroyed cities and skies burned, small teams of engineers, scientists, and former military personnel worked tirelessly in hidden laboratories and abandoned bunkers. They called it the counterstrike, though no one outside the inner circle knew exactly what it was. The idea had started as a desperate thought. If humanity could not stop the invaders on the battlefield, maybe there was another way. Maybe the solution lay not in fighting them head-on, but in using intelligence, creativity, and patience. Plans were drawn, tested, and discarded. Devices were designed, dismantled, and rebuilt. Every detail mattered. Every tiny error could mean failure. But the people working on it were determined. They refused to give up. Life in these secret facilities was harsh. Food was scarce, and sleep was a luxury. Engineers and scientists worked in shifts, often staying awake for days at a time, driven by the belief that what they were building could save the world. Soldiers provided protection, patrolling tunnels, checking for breaches, and maintaining security. The air was tense with focus, every sound amplified in the silence of the underground. Yet in the midst of exhaustion, there was a quiet energy, a sense that something important was being created, something that could change everything. They began with small experiments, testing old technology in new ways. Parts of abandoned satellites were repurposed. Electrical grids were modified and energy sources were redirected. Every test taught them something new. Failure was frequent, but it was never final. Each mistake became a lesson. Slowly, a plan started to take shape. A plan that combined Earth's remaining knowledge with ideas that seemed almost impossible. The project required more than just technology. It required coordination and trust. Teams had to communicate secretly across long distances, often using coded messages and low-frequency transmissions that the aliens could not detect. Information traveled through a network of hidden couriers, disguised as ordinary people moving through ruined cities. No one could afford mistakes. Every piece of information, every component had to be protected. The weight of survival pressed down on everyone involved, but it also gave them purpose. As weeks turned into months, the counterstrike grew more complex. It was not a single weapon or device. It was a network of tools, strategies, and defenses designed to catch the invaders off guard. Humans who had once doubted their chances began to see hope. They could not match the aliens in raw power, but they could match them in creativity, patience, and determination. And sometimes that mattered even more. The teams worked in silence, but they shared stories of the world they had lost. They spoke of cities that no longer existed, of forests destroyed, and of oceans that had been scorched. These memories were painful, but they reminded everyone why they were fighting. Each story strengthened their resolve, keeping alive the thought that humanity was worth saving, that Earth was worth protecting. In that way, the counterstrike was not just a plan. It was a symbol of everything humans had endured, and everything they refused to lose. Some of the most difficult work involved decoding alien signals. The ships above had a language and system of communication that humans could barely understand. But by studying patterns, analyzing fragments, and testing theories, the scientists gradually began to grasp parts of it. These discoveries became crucial, helping them understand alien movements and anticipate attacks. Every breakthrough brought both excitement and fear. If the aliens realized what humans were doing, it could all be destroyed. Yet the risk was necessary. The soldiers in these facilities had to learn new roles as well. Many had trained for traditional warfare, but this fight required patience, observation, and careful planning. They became scouts, protectors, and sometimes engineers themselves, helping to assemble devices, maintain machinery, and teach civilians how to survive in this new, unpredictable world. Their weapons were not always enough to fight directly, but their courage and strategy were invaluable. One of the most remarkable aspects of the counterstrike was its scale. Despite the destruction on the surface, people from different regions, backgrounds, and nations had contributed. Hidden workshops in mountains, deserts, and underground tunnels all played a role. No single person knew the full plan, but every person understood that their work mattered. In a way, this secrecy protected the project. Even if parts were discovered, the whole plan could not be stopped. The engineers also had to be creative with energy. Many conventional power sources had been destroyed or were unreliable. They scavenged old nuclear plants, solar arrays, and even abandoned power stations, rerouting energy to fuel the counterstrike. Every watt counted. Machines were designed to operate efficiently, sometimes for weeks without maintenance because there was no time for repairs during an active war. Humans had to outthink not just the aliens, but the limits of their own remaining resources. Communication was a constant challenge. Teams had to speak in codes, using patterns that only humans could understand. A single intercepted message could give the aliens critical information. Yet through it all, the human spirit persisted. People laughed quietly when something worked, encouraged each other when experiments failed, and shared stories of hope. Even in the darkest hours, they found ways to remind themselves that they were alive, that they were still human, and that they could still make a difference. The counterstrike began to take shape as a combination of technology, strategy, and ingenuity. It was designed to be invisible, unpredictable, and powerful. The aliens above had never seen anything like it. Their superiority was based on technology and force, but the humans below had something else: resilience, creativity, and an unshakable will to survive. Each day brought small victories, an experiment that worked, a component that functioned as intended, or a successful test of a new strategy. The team also had to make moral choices. Every decision mattered because mistakes could cost lives. Sometimes they had to risk exposure to gain critical information. Other times they had to leave behind equipment or resources that could have been useful. They weighed each choice carefully, knowing that every human life, every moment, and every decision mattered in a war that threatened to end everything. Despite the pressure, people formed bonds. The shared struggle created friendships that ran deeper than any previous relationships. They cared for each other, protected each other, and motivated each other. In a world filled with destruction, these bonds became their lifeline. They reminded everyone that survival was not just about machines or plans. It was about people, hearts, and the unbreakable spirit of humanity. As months passed, the counterstrike was nearly complete. Small tests had shown that the plan could work, that humans had found a way to surprise the invaders. There was a cautious optimism in the bunker, a quiet confidence that what they were building could change the course of the war. The engineers, soldiers, and scientists prepared the final components, aware that once deployed there would be no turning back. The project also included a communication element. Humans wanted the aliens to know that they were not weak, that they had not been defeated. The message would carry not just technical data, but the essence of human determination. It would be a warning, a declaration, and a testament to what people could achieve when pushed to the edge. This was the human element, the part that no machine, no matter how advanced, could predict or counter completely. Even as they worked, the survivors remembered the world they had lost. They thought of the laughter of children, the beauty of forests, the sound of rivers, and the quiet moments of everyday life. These memories fueled their determination, reminding them that the counterstrike was more than a weapon. It was a promise. It was a promise that humanity, even in its darkest hour, would not give up. Finally, after months of tireless work, the counterstrike was ready. Every component had been tested. Every strategy had been refined. Every person involved knew their role. The system was complex, far beyond what anyone outside the project could understand, but it was ready to be deployed. It was humanity's last chance to show that even when faced with annihilation, they could fight back in ways the enemy could not predict. As the team gathered for the final checks, there was a sense of quiet pride. They had taken what was left of a broken world and created something extraordinary. It was a testament to human ingenuity, courage, and determination. And while they knew the risk was enormous, they also knew that this was their moment. This was the time to show the universe that humans were not to be underestimated. The counterstrike was no longer just a plan. It was a statement. It was proof that even in a world filled with destruction and fear, humanity could rise above, adapt, and fight back. It was a declaration that survival was not just about strength. It was about creativity, intelligence, and the refusal to surrender. And when the time came, humanity would show the aliens that even a battered, exhausted species could strike back with precision, determination, and a courage they had never expected. The moment had finally arrived. After months of tireless work, sleepless nights, and countless risks, the counterstrike was ready, and with it came humanity's last broadcast. The people in the bunker were exhausted, yet every face was determined. They knew that what they were about to do might be the last thing humanity ever sent into the stars, but they also knew it was necessary. This was not just a message, it was a declaration, a warning, and a promise rolled into one. The room was quiet except for the low hum of the machinery. Engineers double-checked the final connections. Scientists monitored the frequencies, and soldiers watched the corridors for any possible threat. Every sound seemed amplified in the tense silence. Even breathing felt loud. Outside, the world was silent in a way that reminded them of how fragile everything had become. Cities above were destroyed. The sky was gray, and the wind carried ash and debris. Yet here, in this underground sanctuary, humanity had one final chance to make itself heard. The broadcast was not simple words. It was a carefully encoded transmission, combining technical data with human emotion. Every pause, every tone, every choice of words had been calculated to ensure that whoever received it would understand its meaning. The engineers had spent weeks perfecting it, making it strong enough to travel light years across space and unpredictable enough to bypass alien interference. It was more than a signal. It was humanity's essence. As the countdown began, the team exchanged brief, silent glances. No one needed to speak. They had all seen too much, and words could only add weight to the already heavy moment. Hands hovered over consoles, eyes focused on screens, and hearts beat fast with anticipation. The signal would not only carry information, it would carry the human will, the refusal to surrender, and the courage to fight back even when the world seemed lost. The commander, a calm and steady presence in the room, nodded to the lead engineer. Fingers pressed the final keys, activating the broadcast. A soft hum filled the bunker as the signal began to flow through amplifiers, transmitters, and satellites that had miraculously survived the attacks. It was a quiet sound, almost unnoticeable, but it carried far more power than anyone outside could imagine. The message began with a simple introduction, a voice speaking clearly and deliberately. It acknowledged the war, the destruction, and the overwhelming odds humanity faced. It was honest, showing the truth of the situation, yet it carried no fear. Every word reflected a species that had been pushed to the brink but refused to be broken. It told the universe that humans were still here, still fighting, and still capable of thought, strategy, and defiance. Then came the warning. It was not a threat born of hatred, but of necessity. Humanity had been attacked, destroyed, and tested, yet it had survived. The message made it clear that anyone who underestimated humans would regret it. It contained coordinates, information about hidden defenses, and technical data that revealed the existence of the counterstrike. Even the aliens, with all their power and technology, had no idea how advanced and cunning humanity could be when driven by survival. Engineers monitored the signal as it traveled into space, watching for interference or failure. Every second felt like an eternity. They had no way of knowing if it would reach its intended destination, if anyone would understand it, or if it would even survive the vast distances of space. Yet they pressed forward, understanding that this was their duty, their responsibility, and their final chance to make their presence known beyond a dying planet. As the broadcast continued, the team allowed themselves a rare moment of reflection. They remembered the world they had lost, the laughter of children in playgrounds, the warmth of sunlight on a quiet street, the simple joys of life before war. These memories were bittersweet, filled with sorrow for what was gone, but also with pride for what had been achieved. Humanity had endured, adapted, and created something extraordinary even in the darkest hours. The message also carried a human touch, something no machine could replicate. It included expressions of hope, resilience, and the unbreakable spirit that had defined the species for millennia. It was not only a warning to enemies, but a statement to the universe that humans were capable of creativity, courage, and endurance. Even if Earth itself were lost, the essence of humanity would continue to echo among the stars. Outside the bunker, the wind howled through ruined streets, carrying ash and debris, but the people inside felt a strange calm. They were no longer only survivors. They were messengers, guardians of a species that refused to be forgotten. Every second of the transmission strengthened their resolve, reminding them why they had worked, fought, and risked everything. This was their moment to be heard, to assert that humans were not to be underestimated. The soldiers stationed in the bunker stood with rifles ready, scanning corridors and entry points. They had learned to be patient, to anticipate threats, and to act decisively. Yet even they paused to listen as the broadcast flowed through the system. They understood the significance of the moment. The signal was not just technology. It was humanity itself sent into the unknown, a declaration that would reach far beyond the ruined surface of their planet. Engineers and scientists worked silently, eyes fixed on monitors checking the integrity of the transmission. Every data packet, every frequency adjustment, every line of code mattered. They had spent months ensuring the message could survive. In the void of space, bypassing obstacles and interference, they knew that failure was not an option. Humanity's legacy, their courage, and their determination depended on the success of this single moment. As the signal traveled, the people in the bunker felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. They had been through loss, despair, and fear, yet here they were taking control in a way they never could have imagined. Their world had been reduced to ruins, yet they had built something new from the fragments of what remained. The broadcast was proof that humanity could rise from devastation, adapt and strike in ways that could surprise even the most advanced enemy. The commander allowed himself a brief sigh, feeling the weight of the moment. Every hand in the room had contributed to this success, and every life lost along the way had fueled their determination. The signal was out now, traveling faster than anything humans had ever sent before, carrying their message into the far reaches of space. It was a silent scream of defiance, a testament to the unyielding human spirit. Even as the broadcast continued, the team thought about what might come next. The aliens above might intercept it, ignore it, or underestimate it. But the people in the bunker knew something the invaders did not. Humans were unpredictable. They had survived the impossible, adapted to chaos, and turned scarcity into ingenuity. The signal was just the first step in a series of actions designed to ensure that even if Earth fell, humanity would not be forgotten. The room was filled with quiet murmurs of encouragement and relief. Engineers adjusted frequencies, scientists analyzed wave patterns, and soldiers maintained their vigilance. Despite exhaustion, there was a sense of accomplishment. For the first time in months, the people in the bunker felt that they had done something truly powerful. They had not only survived, they had reached out boldly to declare their presence, their resilience, and their refusal to submit. Outside, the ruined cities seemed even quieter, as if the world itself had paused to listen. The wind swept through empty streets, carrying ash like a soft reminder of destruction. Yet in the bunker, there was life, energy, and purpose. The broadcast was not only a message to the stars but a symbol of hope. It reminded everyone involved that even in the face of overwhelming odds, humans could act with courage, intelligence, and determination. Hours passed as the transmission continued, reaching farther than anyone could track. Engineers monitored every metric, ensuring stability and clarity. Scientists watched for interference and distortion, making small adjustments when necessary. Soldiers remained vigilant, ready for any threat that might attempt to disrupt the operation. The broadcast was a careful balance of precision, courage, and persistence. At the end of the day, when the final sequences of the signal were sent, the bunker allowed itself a rare moment of quiet reflection. Exhausted faces showed relief, pride, and a subtle sense of victory. The message was out. Humanity's voice had reached into the void, declaring that they were not defeated, not broken, and not to be underestimated. Even if the aliens did not respond immediately or at all, the act of sending the signal had changed something fundamental. Humans had taken control of their story, asserting their existence with courage and intelligence. The last broadcast from Earth had begun, and with it a new chapter of human resilience was written. It was not a plea. It was not a surrender. It was a declaration, a warning, and a promise that the species that had endured millennia of challenges would not be silenced. The team in the bunker knew that this was more than technology. It was humanity itself, reaching out, defiant, and unbroken. And somewhere, far beyond the shattered surface of Earth, that message traveled, carrying with it the spirit of a species that refused to die quietly, a species that had learned, adapted, and fought when everything seemed lost. The broadcast would become the first ripple of humanity's response, a statement that would be remembered by anyone, anywhere, who dared to underestimate. After the last broadcast left Earth, the bunker was quiet in a way it had never been before. The hum of machinery continued, monitors flickered with data, and soldiers maintained their vigilance, but something had shifted. The message was no longer just an idea or a plan. It was out there, traveling across the stars. The people inside the bunker felt a strange mixture of hope, fear, and anticipation. They did not know if anyone would respond or if the aliens would even understand. But they had done what they could. They had made themselves heard. Days passed, and for a while nothing happened. The world above remained in ruins, silent except for the wind carrying ash across abandoned streets. Survivors moved cautiously through destroyed cities, scavenging for supplies and avoiding alien patrols. Life went on in small, hidden ways, but there was an unspoken awareness that something had changed. Humans had sent a signal, a warning, and a promise, and now they had to wait. Then the first signs appeared. Alien vessels that had once moved with complete confidence began to behave differently. They slowed, changed direction unexpectedly, and avoided areas they had previously targeted. Humans in hidden outposts noticed strange patterns. Devices that had been destroyed in earlier attacks were no longer hit, as if the aliens were wary of something they did not yet understand. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but it sparked hope. The scientists in the bunker analyzed every piece of intercepted data. They found anomalies in alien behavior that coincided with the timing of the broadcast. Signals were being scrambled, formations disrupted, and strategies altered. It became clear that the aliens had noticed the message and they were reacting. But to what extent, no one could yet know. The unknown made humans anxious, but it also confirmed one thing. The broadcast had reached its target. The hidden counterstrike installations became more active. Devices that had sat dormant for months were now being monitored and tested with greater urgency. The engineers and soldiers worked around the clock, adjusting systems and refining strategies. They knew that the broadcast had bought them time, but it had also put a responsibility on their shoulders. Humanity had been heard, and now it had to act. On the surface, scattered survivors began noticing unusual effects. Alien patrols avoided certain areas. Sensors failed in patterns that could not be explained by natural causes, and small machines left behind by the invaders began malfunctioning. Humans quickly realized that the broadcast had triggered something, though exactly what remained a mystery. Word spread quietly among hidden communities. The message was having an effect, and humanity might finally have an advantage. The soldiers in the bunker trained civilians in preparation for the next phase. Everyone who could move, fight, or help in any way was enlisted. They practiced defensive tactics, learned to use improvised weapons, and coordinated with other hidden groups. There was a sense of urgency in every movement, but also a renewed determination. Humans had survived impossible odds before, and now they had a chance to turn the tide. Engineers and scientists worked to understand the full scope of the alien reaction. Using intercepted signals and observations from scouts, they began to map alien movements and identify weak points. The counterstrike, once only a plan, was now in action. Its hidden networks, carefully placed throughout the planet and in orbit, were beginning to influence alien systems. Small disruptions grew into larger anomalies. Humans were slowly shifting the balance. The emotional effect on the people in the bunker was profound. For months they had worked in fear and exhaustion, never knowing if their efforts would matter. Now they saw proof that their actions had meaning. It was not victory yet, but it was hope. Hope fueled their work, their courage, and their determination to survive. They understood that humanity had been underestimated, and that the universe was beginning to notice what humans could do when pushed to the edge. Survivors outside the bunker began taking more daring actions. Small groups moved through ruined cities to reclaim resources, disable alien equipment, and support one another. They shared intelligence, coordinated ambushes, and protected each other in ways they had never imagined possible. The broadcast had sparked more than just alien caution. It had inspired humans to act, to fight back and to reclaim parts of their world. The aliens, though technologically superior, had not anticipated the resilience of humans. Every disruption caused by the counterstrike, every unexpected move, forced them to adapt. Their systems were designed for precision and control, but humans had introduced chaos into the equation. The more the aliens tried to respond, the more unpredictable their outcomes became. It was a lesson in underestimating determination and adaptability. Inside the bunker, teams worked tirelessly to maintain the broadcast's effect. They monitored signals, adjusted frequencies, and coordinated with scattered human outposts. The counterstrike's hidden devices were activated in sequence, designed to disrupt alien control networks and create strategic advantages. The humans had transformed their survival plan into a coordinated counterattack, not with brute force alone, but with intelligence, strategy, and creativity. Communication among hidden human groups became more efficient. They shared observations, planned maneuvers, and supported one another in ways that allowed small communities to thrive even under alien surveillance. Information moved like a river, sometimes secret and subtle, but always flowing toward the goal of survival and eventual retaliation. Humans had learned that even in isolation, they could act together. The effects of the broadcast began to spread beyond Earth. Sensors picked up subtle anomalies in space, strange fluctuations in alien fleets, and unusual activity that could only be explained by human interference. Even distant observers noted that the invaders were no longer acting with complete confidence. Humanity, once nearly destroyed, was beginning to shape events far beyond the planet's surface. The psychological effect on humans was just as important as the physical effects. Knowing that their actions mattered, that the broadcast had made the aliens hesitate, gave them courage. People who had been hiding for months now moved with purpose. They rebuilt, scavenged, and planned. Communities that had been isolated were now connected by hope, shared knowledge, and the sense that they were part of a larger story. Small victories became milestones. A previously destroyed power station was reclaimed and repaired. An alien probe was disabled, giving humans new intelligence. Hidden caches of food, water, and medical supplies were discovered just in time to save lives. Each event reinforced the idea that humans were not helpless, that strategy, ingenuity, and courage could overcome even the most formidable enemy. The counterstrike's influence grew steadily. Hidden machines, communication networks, and strategic placements combined to create an invisible web across the planet. Alien systems were disrupted, their patrols confused, and their confidence shaken. Humans, though battered, had created a new type of resistance. They had turned survival into strategy and desperation into opportunity. Soldiers trained in the bunker led small groups to critical locations, guiding civilians and scavengers safely, while coordinating with the larger counterstrike network. The human presence, though scattered, began to take on a new strength. There was a sense that the war could be fought differently now, not with massive battles, but with intelligence, strategy, and careful, decisive action. The aliens, confused and cautious, started to retreat in some areas, redeploy in others, and abandon strategies that had once been their standard approach. Humans had forced them to adapt, a situation they were not accustomed to. Every hesitation, every misstep, allowed humans to reclaim lost ground, gather resources, and strengthen their hidden positions. It was a turning point, subtle but significant. The people in the bunker understood that they had changed the course of the conflict, even if no one outside knew it yet. The last broadcast, the counterstrike, and the coordination of human effort had shifted the balance. For the first time in months, there was a sense of real possibility. Humans were not just surviving, they were influencing, shaping, and fighting back in ways that had once seemed impossible. Hope became a tool as powerful as any weapon. It fueled courage, innovation, and persistence. Every person who believed in the message, who acted on the counterstrike's guidance, contributed to a larger human effort. Humans, once underestimated, were becoming unpredictable, adaptive, and resilient. And with every successful maneuver, they learned more about the enemy and themselves. In the quiet moments, the people in the bunker reflected on what they had accomplished. They had sent a message that reached beyond Earth. They had activated a system that disrupted alien control. They had inspired humans scattered across the planet to act. And most importantly, they had proved something fundamental. Humanity, even at its lowest point, could not be ignored, defeated, or underestimated. The world outside remained dangerous, but the tide was shifting. Humans had discovered that survival was not just about hiding, escaping, or waiting. It was about action, intelligence, and the courage to continue despite overwhelming odds. Each small success strengthened the human spirit and reinforced the lesson that the strongest force was not technology alone. It was the unyielding will to live and to fight back. And so, as days turned into weeks, humans continued to act with purpose. After the last broadcast left Earth, the bunker was quiet in a way it had never been before. The hum of machinery continued, monitors flickered with data, and soldiers stayed at their posts, but everyone felt the change. The message was gone. The act itself had weight. Hope, fear, and exhaustion mixed together. They didn't know if anyone would hear it or understand it, but they had done what they could. Days slipped by with no sign. Above ground, the world stayed still. The wind carried ash. The sky remained gray. The few survivors who still moved through ruined streets searched for food and water, and stayed out of sight of the enemy. They whispered about the broadcast, though none of them knew its words. They only knew that somewhere someone had dared to speak for Earth. Then small things began to happen. Enemy craft changed their routes. Patrols grew thin. A few old satellites, dead for months, suddenly came online again. The scientists in the bunker watched their monitors, puzzled. "They heard it," one of them murmured. No one celebrated, not yet. But everyone stood a little straighter. Reports started to reach them through secret channels. In the northern ruins, a group of survivors said the sky glowed with strange lights one night, and the alien patrols vanished the next day. In the southern wastelands, machines that had once hunted humans had powered down without warning. It was as if the broadcast had disturbed something deep within the enemy network. The engineers worked without rest. They checked the counter-strike systems, fine-tuned transmitters, and pushed new instructions through the few satellites still orbiting the planet. The signal wasn't only a message now. It had become a weapon of confusion. Every small disruption was part of a larger plan. Outside the bunker, people noticed the change. They began to move with purpose again. They scavenged parts, repaired vehicles, and sent scouts to map the broken world. For the first time since the war began, people were organizing themselves. The broadcast had given them more than hope. It had given them a reason to believe that humans could fight back. The aliens still ruled the skies, but their movements were uncertain. They circled above empty zones as if afraid to go near certain areas. Their precision was gone. They had been sure of victory, but now something invisible made them hesitate. In the bunker, the commander watched a map flicker with lights marking human outposts. "They're listening," he said quietly. It wasn't just the aliens who had heard the message. It was humanity itself. Groups that had never met before began to coordinate. They shared frequencies, codes, and warnings. Across the shattered continents, scattered humans were turning into a single silent force. The soldiers trained civilians, teaching them how to defend themselves and how to hide from alien scans. They showed them how to build traps, how to jam sensors with scraps of metal, how to make every ruined city a maze. Humans didn't need giant ships or powerful weapons. They needed creativity, patience, and courage, things they had always had. Every few days, the bunker picked up faint echoes of the original signal bouncing back from deep space. The scientists stared at the screens, wondering what had caused the reflections. It could have been debris or interference, or it could have been something else. No one said it aloud, but the same thought lingered in every mind. Maybe someone, somewhere, had answered. Small victories began to happen. A power station was repaired and lit up a section of the darkened Earth. A factory was brought back online to produce simple tools. A human drone captured alien data and transmitted it to the bunker. Each success spread through hidden channels like fire, keeping hope alive. The aliens started to change their tactics, pulling back ships from Earth's surface and focusing on orbit. That was the mistake humans had been waiting for. The counter-strike network extended its reach upward, using the abandoned satellites to interfere with alien communications. Every signal the aliens sent was now at risk of being twisted or redirected. The scientists realized that the broadcast hadn't only carried a warning, it had also carried a code. Embedded in the message was a hidden pattern, one that interacted with alien technology in ways they hadn't expected. It didn't destroy systems outright, it confused them, made them mistrust their own data. The aliens began to fight against shadows, unsure what was real. For the first time, Earth fought back not with guns, but with knowledge. The people in the bunker understood they were part of something larger than survival. They were proving what humans were capable of when pushed beyond limits. Every setback, every loss had taught them something new. Days turned into weeks. The bunker's air was filled with quiet energy. No one smiled much, but there was a new light in every face. They were tired, hungry, but alive and proud. They knew the road ahead would still be hard, but they had taken the first step toward balance. Above the clouds, alien ships continued to orbit, still powerful, still dangerous. Yet inside those ships, alien commanders hesitated before every order. They didn't understand why their systems glitched, why their scans failed, or why the planet below refused to stay quiet. The humans had changed the game. The survivors on the ground felt it too. The wind still carried dust and smoke, but also something else, possibility. They began to rebuild small shelters into homes, to plant seeds in patches of clean soil, to write messages on the walls of old buildings, words like, "We are still here." And as night fell across the battered Earth, the bunker's monitors continued to hum softly. The engineers adjusted frequencies, sending out updates to the counter-strike network. Every pulse of energy was another reminder. The broadcast was still out there. echoing, spreading, touching unknown corners of space. The commander looked at the team and said, "Whatever happens next, they know now. We're not a silent world anymore." In the quiet that followed, everyone returned to work. The war wasn't over, but the fear had changed shape. The people of Earth had seen what they could do together, and the universe would never see them the same way again.